We know that. But how many of us know that we are more of a gas producing country than an oil producing country? But everybody's talking about oil. Everybody's talking about oil. Now let's even take the statistics within the oil sector. We are so blessed a country with oil. In fact, let me use my voice. I think I can project my voice. My voice is as loud as my body. So we have this country in the late 50s. We started exploiting our first commercial venture. And I'm sure a lot of people have heard about Oloibiri when we did all of that. But now Nigeria is a country that produces about 1.2 million barrels of crude per day. Though we had some issues, we started hearing about oil theft. In 2012, the rate of oil theft in Nigeria was just about 4%. But by 2022, 2023, we had that it rose to 70%. And within this period, the amount that was voted for protection of oil facilities tripled, and still we had issues of oil theft. Building, you see how high this building is. The ships, and they don't. So in the wisdom of the leaders in the past, they said we cannot be an oil producing country, produce all of the oil that we have and send it out. Let us leave out of that 1.2 million barrels we produce every day, about 445,000 barrels for domestic usage. Now for the mathematicians in the hall, 1 barrel of crude, we produce about 73 to 80 liters of PMS. That's the one we buy from the filling stations. So calculate 445,000 barrels per day times 73 or 75, depending on the production that we're supposed to keep in Nigeria. And to be able to do that production, we built 4 refineries. 4 refineries along the line. These 4 refineries were not able to produce 0 barrel. They were not able to produce 0 barrel. But we had people who were working in these refineries, getting promoted, getting paid. We did that. Perhaps you have not been able to see the NATI report. I'm excited because just yesterday, NATI released its report for 2022 to 2023, and they are telling us that companies are owing Nigeria over $6 billion. $6 billion owed because people are not paying what they are supposed to pay. And out of this 6 billion, 6.5 billion, 6.03 is for royalties, gas flare penalties, and all of that. And we complain of energy crisis in Nigeria. We cannot be close to the river and not have water to take our baths. We cannot do that. So there's no way we can talk about energy crisis and not talk about the resources that we have in the country. So you have 445,000 barrels per day that you're supposed to use as domestic consumption. And at a point in time, we are not getting that. Our former NNPC, that is now NNPCL, they call direct purchase, direct sales contract. And some time ago, this same NNPC voluntarily signed on to what we call the Open Government Partnership. And that's why I agree with Doug when he said there are lots of things that we have, just that people are not implementing that. NNPC carried their 2 hands, including those that use left hand to write, and said that they were going to do contract transparency and they will let Nigerians know the content of that contract. We, as an organization, did over Sabi, we said, okay, we have seen where you wrote it, because they say you put something in the book and people will not read it, but we went and read it. We sent an FOI to NNPC to say, please, can you tell us, show us those contracts? Do you know what happened? They sent Afe Babalola to report back to us.
On the science side, they'll have a 10 minute.
Afe Babalola told us that NAPC is not under any obligation to give. I was saying, well, the ones who said they're going to do this. We did that forth and back, and we never got any response. Of subsidy and no subsidy. If you recall, when President Yar'Adua was around, he was the one that first talked about the cabal in the oil and gas sector. So the cabal at the high level is not a new thing, it's something that has been going around. And said the cabal will not allow this to happen. I was one of those on the streets in 2012 when we accused Jonathan of removing subsidy. In 2016, as soon as Buhari came into office, he also increased subsidy. But over 70% of us that were on the street accusing Jonathan of increasing subsidy, he said, no, wait a minute, maybe the man has a plan. I flew all the way from Asaba to Abuja. We were not up to 10% on the streets protesting the removal of subsidy by the president. And you know it has never gone down. It has gone up. Yesterday in Abuja, I bought 1,000 naira. Last week in Benin, I bought 1,300 naira per liter. This is for a country that is oil producing. This is for a country that has made provision for 445,000 barrels per day for its local consumption. This is also for a country with 4 refineries that are not working. So what did we do? We decided to leave our 4 refineries that are not working and put 20% of our cost into that Dangote refinery that has now reduced to 7%. When the story started, it was 20%, right? Yeah. But when the fight started, we now got to release now 7%, right? So this is the reality. Whether you like it or not, we're talking about energy crisis. We must talk about the resources that we have not managed transparently. And it is fighting everybody. And I know with this energy crisis, there's this, I think it was a show, they said the rich also cry. You saw that when Dangote and government were fighting, I now understood what it meant for the rich to cry. So now let's talk about the Dangote refinery. Dangote is getting crude in Naira, was selling back to us in the prevalent rate in dollars. When the petroleum industry bill made a provision for independent owners of refineries to be the ones that will have license to bring petrol into the country, we were crying, we were shouting, because we knew that today what we're having with the Dangote refinery will happen. People are celebrating Dangote refinery. Dangote refinery has come on stream, but we're still buying petrol very high. 2022, 2023, the elections. I wish that Mr. Kanko was here. All of the presidential candidates agreed they were going to remove subsidy, but there was not one of them who had a blueprint on how that was going to happen. Now it has happened, and we are all here. What do we do? What is it that Nigerians are saying? Nigerians are saying that we cannot be an oil-producing country and be paying the price for the recklessness and irresponsibility of policy implementations that we have in the country. That's just what we are saying. We are saying that if we have crude in our country, and we are exporting it out, think that we are exporting our 445,000 barrels of crude, and we are only bringing back EMS. If you refine crude, you will have diesel, you have jet fuel, you have, but the only we bring back is fuel. Then the money that we're supposed to get from the extra, nobody talks about it, and we're talking about how much we're paying landing costs, landing there and landing there. Because when you put all of those into consideration, the cost will definitely come down. The cost will definitely come down. So we really need to be able to hold government accountable. The Petroleum Industry Act is there. By the way, that Petroleum Industry Act took us 20 years. That's to tell you how serious we are with the sector that fuels our economy. Our budget is based on how much we sell every crude, right? So if crude is selling for $40 today, we're already projecting how much, and that is what we use for our budget. And at the same time, we're not serious about the law that governs that sector. And we should know this. We should know this. But when they want to play the politics, you will hear the authority come out to say, the crude that Dangote is giving is below standard. Why should you let me know that on the on TV? Why haven't you done your due diligence to let us know that this is what you did, this is what you did, this is the percentage of carbon, and this is why you say it's not right? Just because you see that a policy fluctuation somewhere, you come out to say this is not right. At the end of the day, is it not the same thing we have come down to? Now, that have to say he has to determine how much he will sell. Because that's what the Petroleum Industry Act says. Open market policy. You should, if you go to buy, you should be able to come to determine how much you are selling. And then he said it is the Federal Executive Council that determines the cost. That responsibility is not for the Federal Executive Council because it's clearly stated there in the PIA. Number two, I don't know, some of us who grew up in areas like Benin City, we used to have what we call Benin Depot. There was an economy around there. People would go there and lift products. But do you know that by the end of 2021, the 6 depots we had in this country, the government-owned depots were not working. They were now using private-owned depots. And when you use private-owned depots, the people want to make profit, right? Meanwhile, people are still working as depot officers. They were getting salaries. They were adding to the salary, but we could have helped to reduce the burden on Nigerians. Now, we went ahead and said people should have modular refineries. By the way, modular refineries can produce about 10,000. So if you take that 445,000 barrels, instead of sending them abroad, you could have given to these modular refineries Naira rates. They will produce and give us petrol. But what do? We go out, we're talking about oil theft. People are in the creeks, they are refining petrol, and they are putting it in those big ships, and people are saying they can't see them. It is only in this country we had a ship that left Nigeria and got missing before it got to Ghana. So the fundamental questions we should ask. Number one, I agree with Doc when he said we need to build capacity. Build capacity of citizens to understand what kind of questions they should be asking and what is it that is causing this energy crisis that we have. Is it that in Nigeria we're buying petrol at 1,000 naira a liter? What is happening to our 445,000 barrels per day? Because if you give, for instance, the 445,000 barrels, so a Dangote who is supposed to produce 650,000 barrels a day, then let us look at gas. We're talking about moving to CNG so that we can have less cost. What is the policy? Why is it that we're using CNG? What is the incentive for Nigerians to move to CNG? By the way, those people who say we should use CNG are still using for petrol. And there is no incentive. They have set up a few CNG stations around, but what about the conversion? What about the importation of CNG? The same mistake, I'll end on this point. Nigeria used to be a coal country. If you go to Enugu, those coal plants there. And then the whole conversation globally started for people to use fossil fuel in terms of crude oil. Nigeria started using crude oil and we forgot about coal. The people who were pushing coal are still using coal today to generate energy. Now there's the conversation for energy transition. We are taking first again. Nigeria is the first country in West Africa to set up the Climate Change Act, Are we implementing it? There is an energy transition plan, and we have said that the vehicle for energy transition is gas. How accessible is gas to people? You know how much you buy a kg of gas? It is still not accessible. So the questions we should ask, one, sir, the laws are there. The Federal Consumer Protection Council that you mentioned is the same Federal Consumer Protection Council that came out to say Nigeria should begin to reduce price, but the next day fuel price went up, even officially. And I'm asking that advocacy or direction should be first taken to the people who are increasing fuel, because everything about livelihood in Nigeria is centered around the utilization of PMS. Cottage industries, barbers, whatever, no matter how small that business is, they rely on fuel. I tell you, we're buying fuel 1,000 naira in Abuja. In the communities, people are already buying a bottle of beer, which is equivalent to 1 liter, for 2,000 naira. Fundamental questions we must ask, because all of us are wearing the shoe and it pinches us. Must we continue like this? Must we keep quiet and allow these things to happen and say, be patient? For how long are we going to be patient? For how long are we going to address this energy crisis? And for how long are we going to play with NEC, who is putting people from band A to band C today, tomorrow to band A? We don't really know what is happening. For how long are we going to do that? And that's why I think this is something very important one and has come out as questions. For women, we bear the brunt. The report was shared by NEC. It shows that within the extractive sector, women are underemployed. You have about 83% of men employed in that sector, with just 70% of women. When women are not sitting at the table for policy making, it affects them negatively. And I tell you, when it affects the woman negatively, you know how it is at home. Thank you very much.
For transparency advocacy. The reason why the executive director of this very noble Center for Transparency Advocacy. On and on that the great purpose that we have is something about corruption. It doesn't you call it mafia or you call them cabal, whatever you want to call them, are holding this country to ransom. It's unfortunate with all the structures we have, it's judiciary. Comments, if you have any comments you want to make as regards something you want to inject, that you want to it's like so you have been there's a lot of family and it's supposed to be the father in that family. So it's for being here, he has taken slowly. So you have Dr. So I cannot be able to answer. It says, we want to be confused with I know what's what. because we're the today's the money from here. Sure. Thank you very much for the honor, members of the high table. Distinguished guests. I am one of those individuals whose organization was mentioned here. In fact, I came in when Dr. Fagbemi was, debating the FCCPC, NERC. I happen to be a staff of the NERC up till now. So I'm here not in the capacity of NERC, even though a letter was written to me, but in my own capacity as an individual who has been in this country and has witnessed all of these changes. And there are so many things I've picked from all of the resource persons here and those who came to give observations to the more critical are the last two comments from the doctor who has left, Madam, which is that we should really go practical. You see, what you dwell on expands. She mentioned two critical percentages that I really found outstanding, and alarming, which is one, a 4% to 70% increase in the sex ratio between 2012 and today. That is serious. So it means that in Nigeria, and I don't ever want to hear this word corruption. It's a lie. Corruption is a well, can we use them? Okay. I'm sorry. I will be 60 in 2 weeks' time by His grace. So I'm a real Nigerian. I have stayed here. I've worked in the public service for almost 40 years. So I'm retiring on the 10th of October, not out of my inability to be able to continue. As far as I'm concerned, genetically, I tell myself I'm 45 years old. So I still have about 15 years of real practical service. And it pains me every time I see us sit down and we speak and speak. I have a son who is somewhere outside this country. I trained him to be a Marine because for you to survive in Nigeria, you have to learn the codes of the Marine. You get, an M16, you get a pistol, and you get, that jackknife or whatever they call it. And they give you a specific rounds of, ammunition. You expend those, you probably lose your knife. Every other thing around you now becomes your weapon for survival. That's how I've survived in this country. That's how, unfortunately, we made to survive. But as soon as we step out of this country, we are lying. My son, for 24 years, I was preaching, he would tell me, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, you don't understand. But I kept on. I said, look, you are my own experiment. First and foremost, you become an engineer, not because I'm an engineer, but because I know for you to be an engineer, your brain must be torn apart and then be brought back gradually. So that when you come out with your degree in engineering or law or accounting, you are able to blend into any circumstance you find yourself easily. I didn't do engineering. I am in social sciences. For over the years, I have strived So when the guy finished his engineering, he gave it to me. He said, "That take your petroleum and gas engineering, take it." It very was almost crying. Because I told him, you get the first class, I give you a car. He got a 2-1, very hard. And he was disappointed. It took him time before he gave me the result. I saw it. For me, it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I am an average person. And I saw A's, and I saw where the mistake happened that dropped him. But guess what? That's not the story. Immediately he gave me the certificate. He left and said, "Daddy, I'm sorry. I've given you engineering. I want to become an accountant." And today, as we speak, my son is becoming a CPA in Canada. CPA. I schooled in Nigeria, so I know this. You understand? I did my first degree, second degree. Before I started from a polytechnic all the way to a doctorate. You understand? And I was afraid. I see 10 o'clock is 10 o'clock. I kept looking at the invitation prompt, 10 o'clock prompt. But I was seeing Nigerian flag of news. And I thank God the minute I came in, I saw Professor with me still delivering. I said, "Oh, thank God." So I sneaked and sat somewhere here. But us, when you know the problem, we have the solutions. But let us tell ourselves the truth. Electricity is my life. I have lived electricity for almost 40 years. I worked in NEPA. I'm a pensioner of NEPA. I worked in the reform agency that converted, NEPA to PACN and then to DISCO and GENCOs and transmission. I have been in the regulator for 19 years. So I know when we mentioned, Madam, Band A, if we had not introduced Band A, we would not have electricity today. Because, like Prof said, if you don't pay for an item, this is the analogy I usually use. And I'm the chief advocate of NERC. Everyone in Kibos have seen me. See, this is team. What do we need in team? Is the content. But team has to be packaged. Team must be brought to our table. It must have the cost of producing 1 unit of team must be covered for team to come to our table. And whoever is going to produce the next unit of team must have gotten what is return on investment and some elements of profit. So if we want to look good, if we want to move a country to where everything will work, like Madam said, we must tell ourselves, first and foremost, we need to tell ourselves, and I can assure you, governments are not ghosts. They are you and I. All of us are involved. Just one last analogy. I went to Port Harcourt for the conference this week. The day is Saturday. This week has been busy. And I was in a car, a boat. The guy was just complaining about Fubara, about Wiki. It was just, I said, "Look, my friend, what is the problem?" I said, both of them, as far as I'm concerned, they are just, because we're looking at I was looking at jobs for Nigeria. Forest everywhere, bush, close to the airport. I said, this is public work. In the UK, US, when they were growing, public work was railway work. You give hundreds of thousands of people
menial jobs they are doing, they are receiving income. It doesn't matter how small it is. The multiplier effect of somebody earning and buying something from somewhere leads to economic growth. We don't do these things. Everybody wants, it has to be oil. It starts with clearing the. But guess what? That's not the story. The story is we go to the toll gate where he has to pay how much? 200 naira. 300 naira. I know all this chap did. I was just looking at him as sit down because it's my prerogative. He now bought a small ticket from his, dashboard. I was watching him. This chief advocate of Fubara and DJ Edward money. Fubara is not doing anything. I brought the ticket and then approached the lady. Madam, our ladies to have been, converted. And then he gave to me, he put it there. This is the way whenever I meet my friends, because I meet my friends on the road and I say, oh, okay, I'll keep it by the door so you pick seat. Thank you, sir. God bless you. I say, God bless you too. And then the man kept it there and was whispering to the lady, this is right. So the lady, I thought she would scream. I said, no, sir. She placed her hand on collected the ticket. And then we were allowed passage. So I told the guy, I said, what was that all about? He said, sir, the woman will give it to the next person and will collect 300. I said, you see, you are the one killing this woman. Yourself and that woman. So don't even open your mouth. The man was, so for me, that is Nigeria. From your own end, I started with my family. Do it in your own little corner. In the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission, what we have strived to do, and that includes FCCPC. We enter into, we do the needful. We have all the rules, all the regulations, everything. If you want to know how band A and band B and band C came into play, I tell you it's in a different lecture. But if we had not done that, probably all of the generating companies we have today would either have moved their generation to willing buyer, willing seller, because I think the prof said it, generation, transmission, distribution is a flow. Once you hit the machine, it must get somebody has to pay for it. So for every unit of electricity produced in Nigeria, somebody must pay. So if cost reflectivity cannot be achieved, because we say we don't want the correct target, what happens is that the producer of electricity will move his electricity. But all the same, I want to believe that this conversation is what we need on a continuous basis, and all of us will probably one day get the likes of us where we should be, and so we'll make a difference. I thank you very much.
For your child, oh, thank you for exposing. We have got down that we go to it. Because of them shouting band A, band B, band C, like Dr. Kim said, this by Dr. You must go from this. You cannot come back. You cannot do it somewhere else. This man, Dr. Uju, come on, let us see. So, make us as
how area on high selling capital balance and how DJL, TBSs and OCDOTs. I want to welcome and appreciate those that have presented to us. I've been listening. I've been from the beginning till now. I don't intend to leave until we are asked to go home in peace. My worry, my concern, my reflection after all this stewardship, what next? And that is the message we need to articulate. And don't get it twisted. We will do our bit, articulate it and send to the governments. We can look at it. I was thinking that Buhari would have been the worst president we had in this country. When even one of the speakers said the man wasn't listening, he was indifferent. I am aware. Whatever the say, I am aware. I am aware. But what we are saying now, what we are saying now is not scary. Governance is getting to the neck, and they let them know a treason, and they give you a charge of treasonable felony. Only thinking about that implication. It means it's not talk. And all the people that have been talking to me, I'm trying to say this, they have been trying to be politically correct. Nobody wants to run the shoulders. Let's talk about energy crisis. We talk about the leaders. They have something actually your face. You go to social media and rant. What next can you do? Now the question is, after all this, how many people in this world will be angry enough to even believe in the use of that fearless demonstration? Because, in all honesty, when Nigeria accepted INEC acclaimed which accepted us technical numbers, I think Nigeria was finished. There's nothing that will happen in this country that Nigeria will not accept. Crisis, like the corner boots. Nobody will just complain. This is the last one. It's not the last one, but one very true. After all, another one is over. Now, after all the information, let us reflect. Next. Let's get so angry about the situation that you get lost. Let's get what from that from this situation will never change. It's going to change Nigeria at one point. You will be talking to change for you. I have seen this systematic control of everything. Whether you go to one or loss, it's about the world. So people say they are going to take the arts in 2027. Let's be simple about it. So when I how do you get to do that? So the song is after all this information and also to the very fact all basically during the Arab crisis, we are so angry, families were so angry. They left everything, came out to the streets and said, we're here in the place of the governments, either change some policies or change out of their leadership positions. So, after all this information, what's next? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And actually thought every single year I think should be done. So and transfer space. You are going to depend on something.
That's something before. Because the gentleman next. As some of the find out about good afternoon, all. I will be also talking a little bit about electricity. It's one of the components of the energy crisis. My name is Gordon Mumbo. I'm a practicing petroleum engineer. And I also work as a management consultant. Every project has two sides. There is the supply side and there is the demand side. The supply side is seeking the language of in other words, reflecting revenue. The demand side is seeking the language of affordability. And in between them is commercial losses. I think most institutions that we have across the length and breadth of Nigeria is mostly on the supply side. That is the ultimate enemy. And what is that mean? Losses. We don't make the requisite investment to reduce transmission losses. We don't make the requisite investment to reduce distribution losses. We don't make sufficient energy to reduce commercial losses. And let's see that. Until this is removed, we will continue to pass on the cost imposed by months on the demand side, thinking that the demand side has increased the last 64 for them to increase costs in the name of first-related tariff. It's a self-defeating cycle. Eventually, even the system of our own will die. Because the consumers do not have infinite disposable income to continue to pay. We have to deal with this thing of technical and commercial losses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is media practitioner going to private practice. In all what I'm understanding here about my profession as a mentorist, I have an understanding about the energy crisis here. I'm actually thinking about my mom, the village, and how the villagers have been gathering a lot of firewood from different forests and trying to burn them into charcoal to cook their food, to roast meat, and to do every other thing. We've been hearing about the encroachment of desertification, especially from the Sokoto axis. And Nigerians, I don't think we are doing anything about it. Even if we are doing something, I don't think it's sufficient enough. So my question is, in all this energy, whatever we are talking about, yes, they've talked about petroleum, power, generation and all that, but I am looking at the wood that is being exploited on daily basis from our forest, and our forest is quite depleting every day, and we need it because every restaurant in Nigeria, every people roasting fish or roasting meat to sell in the evening, roasting the plantain and the rest of it, they need charcoal. And our forest is quite depleting. What are we doing, or what are we doing about it? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. They don't want them to roast fish or I am Barsan Charles. My question goes to Dr. Shitu specifically. Even though I know that you said you are here your own personal capacity. So I'm asking this question to you, your own personal capacity. Yes, not today. Yes, there are 3 points here: price, then consent, then participation. Talking about band A, band B, band C. I ask, when we talk of taxation, we say pay as you earn. Why not give a flat price and let people pay as they consume? After all, everything has been prepaid. Yes. Why do we still have someone paying holding 50,000 naira and getting less than his neighbor down the other part of town who loaded the same amount? So why don't you consider it that way? Since Nigerians are willing to consume electricity, Nigerians are willing to consume electricity. So it doesn't matter whether they are on band A, band B, or band C. So secondly, I want to ask about consent. My neighbor said, according to him, that one AEDC official came to his house and said he wanted to check something, and he said, "You are free, check." Then 2 days after, he loaded electricity and his children did that. And then he was at work a few days later, and they said, "Daddy, the airtime has finished." I said, "It cannot be possible." They said, "It has finished." When he came back from work, he checked his meter and it was 0. And he was surprised. The next morning, he rushed to AEDC, the nearest one, and they told him, "Sir, we have changed you from band B to band A." So for me, it's about consent. I don't know the part of the world where for me, it's a contract between a company and an individual. You should have the consent. You should consent to be on band A or band B or band C. That is what I think. ADC or all these distribution companies rather.
There's a hand on
Yes, sorry. Distribution. They should have this a consent on the part of the consumer before putting him on band A or band B or band C. Yeah, not participation in the sector. I think this electricity sector, it needs to be justified. It's almost like the petroleum sector too. Yes, you hear about selling stocks in the markets. Nigerians go there and buy shares. If you are talking about cost of production, if government is talking about cost of producing electricity, I think they should be more transparent in allowing them to be listed on the stock exchange so that Nigerians, the masses, can go and own shares there, and then we have a sense of belonging, a sense of ownership in these industries. And I think that will also help us in terms of price regulation and policy making for the interests of the sector generally, and the seller and the user. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I start to go into the that we said now, basically, because now, my wife are here. I never said problems that just a handful of people stay moment. So they said someone like was I don't know how your gadget can be.
Thank you very much. I want to ask our CDOCs and other protocols respected. The analysts have provided us with an overview of the current energy crisis and the impact it's making on the economy. And they have also given us, provided the main factors contributing to the energy crisis, especially as it affects the economy and citizens. My question is, apart from demonstrating, which we do that we'll do that on Tuesday, how can citizens actively participate in energy conservation efforts and contribute to a more sustainable energy future? The second question again is
I guess some that can be implemented to prevent similar energy crisis in the future. Thank you.
All right,
His name is Engineer Solomon Olufemi. Ask him to unmute.
Yeah, good afternoon. Can you hear me? Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Hello? Okay. I'm Kapun. Our members, let me stand on every established protocol. Thank you for this very good program. I just want to ask, because I remember in the 80s, somewhere in Jos, I think within Plateau State, that there used to be a private line that supply. Hello, can you hear me? Okay, there is that. Okay, there is that private organization that supply electricity to companies, to those that actually wants to get through that private electricity company. It is, I'm not even sure it is there again. The kind of supply that we have today, I don't know, why is it not possible for private organizations to compete with the PHED or whatever that we have in the country today? Because when there is monopoly, definitely there is no way that you can get real value for what you are getting. So I've expected that by now we'll have different organizations that will compete with the distributor companies that we have today. Because with the kind of distributor company that we have today, there is no way we can get anything positive. The monopoly is making them to do whatever they like. When the NEPA that time was actually given out to different organizations, it was expected that they will come in with their own financing and at least boost and come up with the distribution company that will supply and distribute well. But today, what do we have? Distribution companies that are waiting for government to give them whatever money that they will distribute among themselves. I think we need to look at it. Why is it that the private companies cannot come in?
I think the respect is
the generated much for the opportunity.
We appreciate your comments. And some points that he just made comments now. Some that came from persons. And I know one was through there here at Dr. Shari. Giving us the responses, just make those quick responses.
Thank you very much. It's a very, I knew that each time I introduce myself, probably one of the most maligned area is because we need electricity 24/7. As you are sitting here, you don't need your car, so your fuel is being conserved. But as you sit here, even if you are not using the electricity, you need to charge. We start with the last comment on the regulation and all of the attempts that have been made so far. The EPSR Act of 2005 was the first attempt. We know that we started with the electricity policy of 1999 or 2000, and then it came to the EPSR Act. It broke the monopoly of NEPA. It used to be just NEPA. Then we are here where we are with 6111. We still have 6112. We have 12 distribution companies because our back power, somebody mentioned, I think it was mentioned, Above Power has come in, even though Above Power was geometrics, they had a license even during the pre-privatization period that was prepared, that was given to them by the Ministry of Power. But unfortunately, so many things. The bottom line, sir, is that for you to liberalize the power industry, 1 megawatt of electricity costs, at least as a last count, this was 5 years ago, we were bantering with this number, $1 million US, end to end, yes. 1 megawatt of electricity costs $1 million US. This is, it's, of course, whenever I open my mouth to speak, I am mindful of people like Madam here, who's and Prof, of course. So it is not one. If not, you know what it costs you to run a better past my neighbor. So bottom line is that there are laws, there are rules, regulations. If you go into our website, www.nrc.gov.ng, there are myriads of regulations and orders that we have made to allow for some semblance of competition, some semblance of coming in by parties. The Electricity Act of 2023 even made it a little bit more, made it liberal. Every state now, I'm sure you've been hearing that states are setting up their regulatory bodies, setting up their electricity acts and what have you. This is liberalization. It's been moved from the exclusive list to completely concurrent. Before, they did not mention it, even though it has always been there. But because there was a lacuna, that's why the federal government took what's it called, the bull by the horn, and can continue regulating electricity. If you go into even the 1999 constitution, even distribution too was there. But because the capacity, the capital nature, the turnkey nature of electricity, and the instantaneous nature of what the product is, as you produce it, you consume it. That's why generation takes place now. When you put on your switch, if it's Kaniji, if it is Shiroro, if it is Egbe, as soon as the turbine is turned on and it hits the 330 kV, transformer and the lines, immediately you put on your switch, it gets here because it atomizes, it doesn't travel. So once it is produced, if it is not being used, you switch it off, it's going to somewhere else. It is highly, highly capital intensive. And of course, nowhere in the world you have, just free flow people doing electricity. Whoever gets into electricity first, you must come with plenty of money. You must come with patience to be able to do it. And you must be willing to stay the course. Electricity is one of the areas where even pension funds put their monies, because you start, once you start earning, it's forever. Me, why I've been in this sector for almost forever is because some years ago I told myself, there's only one product in this life that you can never have a glut in, and it is electricity. The more electricity you have, the more electricity you need. Electricity is probably one benchmark of whoever is. China has caught up with America today because China's electricity has almost equally, if not doubled or gone past that of the US. Because at one time, the US had 1 million megawatts of electricity. Yes. So it is power. As you are seated here, if we had enough electricity, your GS adjustment would be done with a button, and that is energy. So that is one reason, the sheer cost. And then the band A, band B, band C. I must address those three questions: the cost, the consent, and participation. The A, B, C, and D. We did this review of band. Not even now. I think it was done in 2020 or so. That was when we initially introduced band A, B, C, and D. And the basis for it was actually meant to help the citizens to reduce exploitation, because as at that time we had what we call massive, estimated bills. So they simply will not give you electricity; they will charge you. So what the commission did at that time was to go to, without their knowing, because if you are a regulator and pursuing a utility, the person is always ahead of you. So there's always this asymmetry between the regulator and the operator. So what we did was to stylishly request for the data of all their suppliers to every feeder, every community throughout the nooks and crannies of Nigeria. And then we got that data. How many hours do they supply in electricity? They say they give this man 2 hours. That's the best they can do for him. What of him? And why? Because he doesn't have meter, they have not put transformer in his area, the cables they are too old, so they don't have money to it. And for this organ here, him is the Maitama candidate and the Apple candidate. So he has every infrastructure is top class there. So they give him, almost 20 hours of electricity every day. So, and this man, his one is medium. So what we did was to get those ones. It is not conventional practice in tariff making. The gentleman mentioned, the only basis for costing an item, which is what is to put the input, the cost of input, cost of service. But we are in a peculiar country where everything is done in a manner that only God knows. In fact, there was a time the white people came and said Nigerian practices electricity. And I tell you, I was in NEPA then, because they cannot understand how you cannibalize an ABB transformer and you put the parts into an LTEC or some other Hitachi transformer. But that's what we do. It works. So what the commission now did, based on that data that we collected, we now said they didn't know, the distribution companies did not know what we wanted to do. So we now came, some heads, some of us, I have always been a protector of the consumer. I fought and fought and fought. But I said, no, let's follow the rules, let's punish them. But how do you punish people who are constantly everywhere? So we now said, okay, this is it. We call it SBT, service-based tariff. Service-based tariff is the number of hours you get is what you will be paid. That is the distribution company. It was meant to punish the distribution company so that, and every one of them got contracts. He has 4 hours. You must tell us when you will move him to 8 hours. You must tell us when you move that of 8 hours to 12 hours. You must tell us when you will move the 12 hours to 16 hours and ultimately 20 hours being minimum. All of these numbers are mentioned are minimum hours you have to get. And hence, we now attached tariff because there was a tariff review. I think it was in May 2020 or so. And the tariff review was you having 4 hours, you remain at the old tariff. Nothing happens to your numbers. There was a slight percentage increase. And there is cost reflectivity in terms of amounts that we say, okay, this is a unit cost, after which, which everybody will get. So that was how we got all the way to band A. So band A was ultimately, the ultimate cost reflective tariff was maybe around 60 or 65. It was still below. So we now pegged it. And all of the distribution companies, before they realized it, they said, whoa. I will say, okay, you can't charge this much. If you charge, and then we had problem of now supply meeting the obligation from the transmission end. So we now got the transmission and distribution companies to enter into service level agreements. And so if you cannot supply the distribution company with the number, there is a clause that makes you pay him liquidated damages. But even then, all of these ones, according to one of our friends, is too cheap. The practicality of it is that there was a struggle. So we pursued these things one way or the other, plus theft, plus generating companies, because all the distribution companies were now doing was to avoid, they were doing avoidance, avoiding picking load and getting fined by the commission. I think early this year, we suddenly discovered that suddenly the generals were knocking off their machines. They were pulling out their machines from the grid. They were now selling to the Nigeria Republic. There were contracts that were going. They were now getting eligible customers. You know, eligible customers, if you have 2 megawatts and above, you can go straight to the generating company and tie and get distribution company. So a lot of things happened. Hence, we now say, look, for you, distribution company, if you can serve this man 24 hours, you get full, tariff from him. Every other person remain where they are. And so it was meant to, first and foremost, increase liquidity. And then, shortfalls, I think the doc mentioned it in his presentation. Shortfalls, if government says they are going to pay subsidy, what it means that if your cost of service is 60 naira and you are charging 20 naira, somebody is supposed to provide you 40 naira. And because electricity is what it is, every second as we speak here, somebody is putting in money into generation. If you owe him up to the point, he will probably just pull out. And hence we needed that urgent move. And hence the consent, you must get consent before you get what's it called? That is just a nutshell of the consent is that they've not had access to your meter. What you have, each of your prepaid meter, unfortunately, is a billing center. So, unlike when we had postpaid arrangement whereby they had a billing center where they saw everybody, now if they bring the meter and put in your place, if unfortunately at the time of configuring that meter, they didn't tie it to your feeder or tie it to your transformer, it might be a meter meant for somebody in Wuse and was brought to you. It will work because it's a standalone system. So when you buy token, the moment you put in the token in there, it activates. It is not tied. So that's why you see them trying to do enumeration, coming to your place. If they don't pick your meter number and then align it to that feeder, we are punishing them. That's why you see from time to time there comes, even this month, we came out with another sanction for overbilling. As soon as we identify these anomalies by the distribution companies, of course, we punish them. This electricity is a whole day's affair. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mine is very simple and straightforward. What next? You'll discover that my final recommendations were tied to the need to advance the Fearless in October protests. That's the truth. By asking the incumbent government to do some specific things that can show goodwill, restore integrity, restore confidence and trust that they are responsive. And that is why I requested that everyone that had either protested in one form or the other
pursuant to the prerogative of mercy and clemency, the president should kindly institute a nollie concerning those who are now facing the charge of treason and ensure that every other protester that is currently behind bars are released. That way, going ahead with the protest march will no longer be necessary. Not that I am afraid of people protesting, but I am mindful of the fact that we will always have a cacophony when you have protests and you do not achieve anything per se. About 20 pages of what I presented to you actually dealt extensively with the legal and policy frameworks existing, that if they were working, there will be no need for any citizen to actually go ahead to ever get to the level of protesting. While I was in government and I left 28 years plus, I was handling a schedule called the National Mood Reporting System that was embedded in the National Orientation Agency. I handled that responsibility and we were maintaining the reportage every week for the consumption of the then head of state commander-in-chief. Painfully and sadly, the current NOAA is not able to submit more than one report in a month. 28 years ago, there were no computers. We were using at best electricity typewriters, and we were submitting reports every week. There was no internet. Today, they can hardly submit one report in a month. You just retired, so you can bubble my bust of lies if it is lying. Ahead of the End Bad Governance protest march, that agency produced a report called Civilian Intelligence. In that report, the agency skipped some states. It should interest you because I have a copy of it. They skipped some states, meaning that they did not report on some states, and what they actually provided and reported and presented to government, if I was to score it by the standard I was using 28 years plus ago, I will score it minus 900%. What did I say? Minus 900%, because it was not pertaining to the legal and policy frameworks that established that agency, BP 100. So we can go out, but when you go out, please ensure that you are engaging the state, you are engaging NERC. When you read my paper, sir, you will discover that I did a little critique of most of your regulations. Currently, your regulations are skewed towards protecting the investments of the investor citizens. At the consumer end, you are currently weak. Now, it is okay to instill confidence in the investor citizen, but you need to be sure that you have corresponding investment in consumption citizens' interest. The last time the team from AEDC came to my compound, they did not know that before I received my August token, I had received a token to reprogram me back to Band A, even though I am having my property in a place that belongs to Band D. They now came physically to come and reprogram, and they did. No problem. I don't have any problems because I was one of the first set of people
to have received and invested in prepaid meters. The meter got burnt in my house. Incidentally, that time, she was only the person that would always be at home because I was always junketing and then the children would be at school. The meter got burnt. Before the meter got burnt, if they brought the meter readings and then they gave us a bill, we were not paying more than 2,000. Then they suddenly started bringing estimated bill of 10,000. I had to pay 58,700. Then that was the initial price. So I was one of the very first set of people. Then they came one day and I told the lady, I've gone to other people's houses and they have been bypassing. So it's not that the theft is not there. It is just the fact that if you are doing and following the regulations, I allowed them into my house and I told the lady, if you discover that there is no bypassing, I'm going to lock you up and acquire you as my next wife. And unfortunately for her, she went to stay in the children's sitting room. They put on the ACs of the house. And then the moment they checked, there was nothing. She was still in that sitting room. I just locked. Her only saving place was that my wife was around. So my wife said, and all the officers that came with her had to do her tour. They have told you that this man, he doesn't do all this. What are we doing against the impunity of state? That is your question, sir. What we are doing by saying, let us be enlightened about those policy frameworks. You remember that Dr. Shitu was saying, I'm going to be careful not to address some of the things. When you are able to say theft is occurring and you do the disruptive research, you will understand that even if Dangote starts production fully and all the NNPC refineries are functional, if you have not done that disruptive research, that will tell you that the capacity of the depots that are existing in public sector and in the private sector is this, and you ensure that you bridge and put products there, you will soon have a situation where Dangote in particular will rather be exporting. And we would have had the opportunity, and this is why I said, don't go out. You will discover that Dangote bought crude, from the US. How did the crude get to the US? If you have had a situation where crude theft was 4% by 2012, but today it is over 70%, and those who are in the know will tell you that it is actually edging towards about 80%, meaning that we need to get state apparatus to do the needful. And for us to begin to say, you have gone into retirement, yes, but come back. Come and vomit what you have done. So if you go out onto the streets, my brother, my sister, you are not achieving much. And then, unfortunately, they will activate security law enforcement and they will use legal provisos that are not relatively to be used. Treason is not supposed to have been used. It's the same thing I've been having a running battle with my colleagues and friends that are in security and law enforcement. There is nothing like farmer-herders clash. What did I say? There is nothing like farmer-herders clash. There is nothing like communal clash. It is a deliberate attempt by the security and law enforcement system to run away from their responsibilities. Because what are the things that are really happening when you say you have those clashes? Women are raped. women are killed, citizens are killed. When you have rape, based on the penal and criminal code, you can easily investigate. Regulation 420 of the police demands that we should have forms under which documentations must be done. It means that if you have a cause from what is reported as nomadic X-Men security challenge, reported as farmer others class, when there is a laceration, when the bullet goes in, you must say this thing, this one, this is the type of weapon that was used, and it becomes an homicidal thing. How many homicidal investigations have been done concerning all these issues? I stand to be challenged and corrected. A deputy commissioner of police was killed here in Abuja when there was the procession. And don't worry, these are the areas where you need to understand that you just don't jab, you act. And when you are acting, you must act correctly. A deputy commissioner of police operations was killed. It was this Islamic movement of Nigerian people. Right. Now, for those of us who have the privilege of seeing the photography of his corpse, that young man was killed by a friendly fire, where the bullet went through, and you can see by ballistic orientation that the bullet was from a particular kind of weapon that is issued only to states functionaries. So if you want to address these issues, make sure you know the legal and policy frameworks. Some people will occasionally, when I appear on television, will be phoning my wife. We are praying for you. You know why they are praying? Because I will discuss some of these issues headlong. And when anybody who is familiar with the legal and policy frameworks is talking, the people in-house have nothing to do with you. They will just tell you, leave him. Collect the video and do your analysis of what he has said, because what he is saying is equivalent to what some of us have been trying to tell you inside. Impunity can only be checkmated when we engage state operators, those actors who are grandstanding. Take, for instance, if I want to engage somebody like Femi Gbajabiamila, who is now the chief of staff, he presided over hosting a national security summit while he was speaker. If only since he had become the chief of staff to the president, he had implemented all the recommendations in that report. If you need the report, I'll make it available to you. There will be no insecurity in Nigeria today. But what do? They will, like she rightly said, they will tell you we are going to operate transparently. They will carry the instrument and go to United Nations. We've already what is the entire legal department, and they have over 100 lawyers inside NMPC. Why will Afe Babalola react? The kind of things I want us to be involved in is to say, this CTA requested for FOI. You went to engage Afe Babalola. What justification, therefore, do we have for you to retain your legal department? I thank you.
I think it's about wraps it up from the question and answers segment. Time is very right now not our friend, and so while to make his comments.
Thank you so much. Our governors are all GMs or CEOs. And great panelists. It's nice to be here, and I don't know what to say, but at least I've been thoroughly enlightened. When I saw the topic, energy crisis, I'm a doctor. I look at it from the perspective of medicine, and I said, okay, we talk of ATP related to your food and stuff like that, but this is a different energy which affects all of us. So, like you said, we're no longer a citizen, so I need to say fellow citizen, but I'll say fellow masses. And very wonderful panelists. There will be a rapporteur's report, and there will also be vote of thanks. But let me first of all appreciate the great work, and let me appreciate the tech for this kind of summits. This kind of things we actually need. And for those of us who are saying after the Trinity workness, there are a lot to be done. Because if you look at NSAP, I don't know if whether you were involved. It started from Twitter, and a lot of things have before that protest. So when you start having this kind of discussions continuously, the people they will listen to you. They might not listen to you, but they will listen. So have it at the back of the mind that all that you're talking here, they will listen. When you finish his paper, unfortunately, I was never had a go with C. And I told him I was in a summit that a lot of discussions are taking place, and I want him to have a look and talk to his friend. He said, on Wednesday, if you can travel to Lagos, come with papers, I'll get a paper. And I'll give it to him. So some of these things, there are different ways of actually getting some of these things done without actually the way you think you should do it. So so let's take a moment to reflect on all that's happened. Discussed a lot happened, robot discussion, conversations, and we have heard powerful stories and things like shared innovations, going to be done commentations. We then are talking about the JOS plans. Yeah, that's another angle which people look at. I was in JOS that period, and there was never a time in life people that live close to when you just like this and you don't show yourself there, that makes you need to take the action. So if and B man so when I was talking about I was talking about people that still get some of these oil companies. I've not seen any of the places where they work that don't happen. But that's really vast and a lot has really happened. So we have a lot to do as a nation. And the key takeaway is collaboration, which is what we're already doing with City, which is very good. Madam City, that's this good. And when I was hearing the figures from your head, I said, I wish I can have all these figures in my head and use them to talk, but I don't know. So this collaboration is what we actually add those figures and then put to value. So it's good that we're collaborating. There will be more collaboration. The media is here. So not just City, media is here. And morning's Arise station came here, right? And they conducted this morning. I'm sure most people listen to Arise for their morning issue. So let us, as part of going forward, we can get some of these key speakers and tell Arise, let us discuss energy. It can be done in one session. So a collection of all the discussions, by the time you bring them out separately, different media channels, I'm sure people you think will not listen to the reach, they will listen. Because let me give you a response. Let me give you a secret of what happened. When in those radio stations, TV stations, people are assigned to listen to what they're saying. Once they mention something in the particular ministry, get that by this. And they share it. People that might not do what we wanted to do immediately, it eventually gets something done. So collaboration is one innovation solution already discussed that. But the basic of empowering the citizens and information, that is very, very key. If you don't know, I didn't know how bad ABC came up, but at least from what's done, I want to know. So if
those people coming to my house now. Today, I don't want to see, but when you have not having a system, and I think people continue to do that. Then one of the things that also concern us is he gave example of the boat driver, for example, they on the receipts and won't pay. Right. So let us also look at ourselves and see the best we can do as we as individuals or citizens from us. Let's look at what we're going to do for ourselves as well. Then going forward, for us as NAS, I think occasionally we're going to be having this kind of sessions, but not in a hall like this. Use Twitter handle, bring out the topic, and people will know. We call him. We call all these people, but they will speak. And by the time people start speaking and talking about instance, you'll be surprised how things will definitely change for the better. A lot has been said about the protests and what you need to do. So I don't get at the wrong side of the law. If you have been in prison before by police, right? You know what I'm saying. If you spend days, if you one night, it's okay. One night, it's only the people that you made on video. Treat you well. As president, they are also not put out. By the time you spend 2 nights, maybe people come beating us, cheated to them, and now people are asking. By the time you spend, the same thing in the prison. You go to the prison, it's a different story. But welcome party. There's a welcome party. You won't wait until it's 7 p.m. when the man tell you, okay, you read the rules for you, and then they're not very much. So, as we protest, like you mentioned, let us be mindful of the repercussions, right? But what he also said, can we ask the government to actually go into another prosecute to get things for us that might slow down? We all have connections. There are security people that can call and say, do this, do that, and they will grab it. So let us leave that. So I appreciate ZUMA to a good topic, and I think once Sahara is here, so they won't do worse than this. So I'm sure they are taking careful research, taking notes. I'm sure what to do and what ZUMA has done what. At the end of the day, it's on us. So I appreciate ZUMA, appreciate Sahara, appreciate other experts that are here. Those go online, there are a lot of students online. Those go online, it was a good one to partake in this kind of session. Let's speak and continue to speak. A time will come, the deaf person in the country. How is it goes?
Bonus.
And what was the selection is really good. Showing us that's the
Good afternoon, Engineer Faith. I want to ask DJs, our CDOs, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I went with earlier on. It's what to us. It's on the street. I want to speak with that question. I want us to continue to sleep with this question, but in this, smart as we have extra ourselves. What do you think? In small, locally, you can do it. Will assign to human science session, honestly and frankly. Like I said, we want to give to this nation. And this conversation that we just had today, it's not the one of it will continue. Continue to talk until you know someone is to talk. That which is Nigeria doesn't belong to any class of individuals. It belongs to every one of us. And once Nigeria for the process to pursue and sustain it future. And this is the next to the next of the row opportunities left, and all our invited guests. And I was having to say this. This needs your program. No thanks to those. No students. Look at this. I need something like only I'm getting. So thank you. Distinguished individuals, we thank you all for making an appearance here in spite of your busy schedules to be with us. However, you are not here for fun. You are not here for fun. You are going to discuss our collective. Thank you, and God bless your soul.
One,
I'm telling you. These are no different.